into Siberia, we see, not to mention the cyber caliphate, a dark and lawless realm of malevolent actors ranging from Russian troll to poor ISIS Twitter user could work with impunity to subvert the institutional foundation of democracy. And here's another one from the New York Times, Thomas Friedman, a well-known columnist for New York Times. And finally, there is the internet barons, who for too long ignored the weaponization of social media, which is turning our free press into a house of mirrors, where citizens can no longer cognitively discern fact from fiction and make informed judgment essential for democracy. We know that social media is flooding us with misinformation and disinformation, much of it in fact directed by state actors. And just to remind you, from a long time ago, from a galaxy far, far away, here is an article from Foreign Policy, a very well-respected policy magazine. And the title is, Can Silicon Valley Save the World? When was that? Just 2013. So in 2013, we thought that Silicon Valley can save the world. And here we are 7 years later. In fact, if you think about it, this started in 2017. Within 4 years later, we are saying that Silicon Valley is destroying Western civilization. Amazing, drastic change in public perception of Silicon Valley from positive to negative. And while every university is starting some program in data science, we have many warnings about the danger of data science. This is a book that received a lot of publicity from 2017. Cathy O'Neill, Weapons of Math Destruction, how big data increases inequality and threatens democracy. And I want to take an example of how big data and machine learning is used in the justice system. So a few years ago, Shirley Ann Jackson, the president of RPI, John G. Robo, the Chief Justice of the United States, visited RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. It's a tech institute in New York State. And he had a fireside chat with the president, Shirley Ann Jackson. And she asked him, can you foresee a day when smart machines driven with artificial intelligences will assist with courtroom fact-finding, or more controversially, even judicial decision-making? And the Chief Justice replies it's a day that's here, and it is putting a significant strain on how the judiciary goes about doing things. The New York Times described it, an algorithm that grants freedom or takes it away. So machine learning in justice system is a reality, tells the Chief Justice. And why is machine learning so used so much? Because the justice system has to make very life critical decisions: bail, sentencing, parole, separating children from parents. These are very, very difficult decisions. The implications are huge. Judges find this responsibility scary, to make these kind of decisions. So if you come and you sell them a machine learning system that will make the decision for them, they're very happy not to have to make this decision themselves. Let the computer make the decision. And you can find these beautiful websites, like a company called North Point, and a website talk about advancing justice and embracing community. Who can object to that? But what they really sell you are proprietary algorithms that are just black boxes. And a few years ago, ProPublica, which is non-profit reporting, did an analysis, and it gave the system two dossiers, two files, which are almost identical, except in one case the defendant was white, and in the other case the defendant was black. And it turned out the system was biased against blacks. And why is that? Well, because there is a whole history of bias in the American justice systems against African American, against black people. So if you use machine learning, you learn this bias, and the system become biased. And this has been described by an article in the New York Times as the new Jim Crow. Jim Crow was a set of laws in the American South after the Civil War discriminating against black people. And she writes, recent criminal justice reform contained the seed of a just frightening system of incarceration. This advanced mathematical model appear colorblind on the surface, but they are based on factors that are not only highly correlated with race and class, but also are significantly influenced by pervasive bias in the criminal justice system. So this machine learning gets biased data and therefore makes biased decision. Okay? In computer science, we jokingly call it GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. And in fact, when scientists were able to audit that system, it's called COMPAS, they found out that first of all, this machine learning system does not make decision any better than what anybody with common sense can do. And while they claim to use a very sophisticated machine learning, 137 different features, you can do the same thing with a very simple linear classifier based just on 2 features. So this fancy smancy machine learning, underneath the inside the black box, there is very simple software. And to take things to the extreme, let's imagine the following scenario, okay? This is my black Labrador, Fluffy. You see, Fluffy is very, very cute. Well, I have trained Fluffy to detect risk of recidivism. Recidivism means going back to crime. I take Fluffy to the person. If Fluffy trusts the person, Fluffy would lick the person. Otherwise, Fluffy would bark. And people have tested, and Fluffy has an uncanny accuracy. But as you can see, Fluffy is a black box, literally. It does not provide explanation. And so now the question is, should we allow Fluffy to make parole decisions? Well, I can just take Fluffy to the defendant, and Fluffy would either lick or bark. And according to that, we can decide to grant bail or not to grant bail. And of course, everyone agreed that this is ridiculous. We should not let dog make decision. But we are letting software black boxes make decision. They are no better than well-trained dogs. There is a well-known science fiction novel from the mid-80s. It's called Ender's Game. And in that novel, Anders is a teenager. Anders is a teenager, and he thinks that he and his friends are playing a video game. What he does not know that he is really fighting an intergalactic war. And when they think they win the video game, they're actually winning the war, and they have destroyed the whole civilization. And at the end of the book, he's horrified by the discovery of what he has done. He has destroyed the civilization. I feel a little bit like this. I'm a computer scientist, and my friends and me, we thought we were just playing games. We thought computers are just fun. We enjoyed programming. And now we're running the world, and we're not necessarily doing a very good job at it. So this is, I said, we have reached our Ender's Game moment. And this is very often interpreted as an ethics crisis. So here is a bunch of titles from newspapers. New York Times, Tech Ethical Dark Side. Boston Globe, Ethics Crisis. New York Times says, we need now, every company needs chief ethics officer. Facebook is such an ethical company that they gave the Institute of Ethics and AI in Europe $7.5 million. So everybody's talking about ethics. And in fact, in the meeting of the Computing Research Association in the United States, it's a meeting of all computing research organization, academic and industrial. And in their meeting in 2018, there was a panel on social responsibility. And the question that was posed to the panel were as follows. We live now in a world that we computing professionals have created. We can no longer pretend we are making the world a better place. What is our social responsibility as computing professionals? And all the panelists said, ethics, 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 ethics. And I want to be the skeptic. I want to say that I don't think it's all about ethics. So my argument would be, I'll come back to ethics at the end, but I will now make an argument that this is not about ethics. And I want to do an analogy with another industry, the automobile industry. So the Ford Model T was rolled off the manufacturing line in 1908. And this is the beginning. I mean, the 20th century clearly was the automobile industry around the world, especially in the United States, but around the world. And very quickly we discovered that automobiles kill people. And we've been spending the last 100 years trying to deal with motor vehicle death. And if you look at the red line is death per million vehicles mile travel, VMT, vehicles mile travel. And you can see that we have done an amazing job. You can see that around 1910, for every billion miles travel, almost 250 people would die. And now we are below 10 people. Now it's about 8 people per billion vehicles mile travel. So we have made automobile much, 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 much safer. How did we do it? By many, many measures, not a single measure. We discovered that cars need mirror inside and on the driver's side, and on the passenger side. And we need to do new technologies such as anti-lock brakes and airbags. And we've changed the city. We have crosswalk and we have traffic lights. And we have passed laws against driving while intoxicated. And now there are also laws about driving while texting. What did we not do? We did not say all the driver needs to have ethics training. No, nobody thinks this is about ethics. We all understand that it's about public policy. All these measures, mirror, ABS, airbag, crosswalk, traffic light, DWI, this is all part of public policy. And it's about how to make cars, how to make the city, and how to regulate automobiles. This is what I call public policy. It's a variety of measures. And nobody thought this is about ethics. And now I want to contrast it with what's happening in computing technology. So let's look at the internet. So we look today at today's internet. The roots, we can go back to the 80s. There was social media in the 80s. There was a system in the Bay Area called the Well, which was a dial-up bulletin board. There was something called Usenet, Unix to Unix network, which is, again, was a very early social media distributed discussion bulletin boards. The people who built this technology in the late 70s and 80s were graduated from the hippie movement of the 60s and the 70s. And the sentiment was very anti-establishment, anti-government. And out of this counterculture atmosphere came the mantra, information wants to be free. So when the World Wide Web was invented in 1989, the idea was, let's have unfettered public sharing of information. Unfettered. And very quickly people discovered that having too much information is a problem. How can you find any information on the World Wide Web? There's just too much information. So the first idea was, well, how do you find books in the library? You have a catalog. So Yahoo said, we are going to build a catalog for the internet. But we now understand that this was very naive, that the web is way much larger than any library, and you could not build a catalog for the internet. So the company Yahoo today as a company does not exist. You can still go to yahoo.com, but as a company, it's not an independent company anymore. The idea of search directory for the internet did not survive. Instead, people said we need search engines. And there are some early search engines. They're not very good. You look for something and you look for one page, second page, third page, you cannot find what you're looking for. And then Google came with an amazingly good search engine, the Google search engine. But Google still operating under the mantra, information wants to be free. So the question was, how do we make money if we cannot charge for information? And the answer was advertising. Let's do what other information-rich industries do, newspapers and TV, other media companies, they do advertising. So Google start doing advertising. Very quickly they realized that advertising is not very effective on the internet. Why? If you want to be effective on newspaper, you put a large advertisement. You pay the money to put a large advertisement. You can try to do the same, but people hated large banners. people thought this was very intrusive. So how do you do that? So Google came up with another idea, micro-targeted advertising. Match the advertisement that one see to one's individual preference. So when I see an advertisement on a page, you can be looking at the same page and you'll see different advertisement because it is tailored to us. How do they do this micro-target advertising? They need personal data. So Google is in the business of harvesting data wherever they can, not only online. You don't know. They also go offline and buy data about you. Even if you go offline and use your credit card, they buy that data because they want to know everything about you to target advertising appropriately. So this gave rise to what has become known surveillance capitalism. This is a book that came just a couple of years ago. And in summary, we are not the customers of Google. We are users of Google. Who are the customer? The customer are people who pay the money. These are the advertising company. So what are we to Google? We are the product. If you're not paying for it, you are the product. What Google sell is really advertising, which is targeted to the data about you. They know you better than you know yourself. I'll come back to it. They know all about us. We know anything about them. This has been called epistemic inequality. How well has it worked for Google? Very well, thank you very much. Google went from $70 million revenue in 2001 to $134 billion in 2019. So this has been enormously profitable business, okay? In fact, newspapers are hurting because Google and Facebook have sucked away much of the advertising. So now let's imagine we take Sergey Brin and Larry Page, these are the two co-founders of Google, and we'll take them to an ethics bootcamp, and we'll teach them all about the ethics of privacy. Are they going to go back to Google and say, we made a mistake, what we're doing is unethical, let's stop doing advertising? No way. They're making by now close to $150 billion a year. They're not going to stop it. And last year I wrote, if society finds the surveillance business model offensive, the remedy is public policy in the forms of laws and regulation rather than an ethics outrage. We should not expect these companies to stop doing to ditch a very profitable business because it's unethical. It's legal, so they're going to do it. We should accept it. If we don't want them to do it, we need to change the law. Now, very often people respond to me, oh, there's nothing really wrong with what Google is doing. We are getting something in return to our data. We're getting free services. And I want to ask, are you 100% sure that these services are free? And you can say, of course they're free. I'm not paying for them. So how come Google makes almost $150 billion a year? Who pays for it? Advertisers pay for it. Where do they get the money? Well, from the company they advertise for. How do the company get this money? From you, the consumer. So Google makes money off us. This is an invisible tax that we all pay. We just don't see it. And because we don't see it, the result is mass surveillance. But it's worse than just mass surveillance. People, again, you think that people would do this deal. They say, okay, I'll give you the data, I get these free services. Most people don't understand what's going on. For example, Facebook maintains a very detailed profile about every user. And at least in the United States, you can go and find this profile of you if you click on enough buttons in the menu. But almost 3/4 of US Facebook users did not know that Facebook maintains such a profile. When they were shown the profile, they were very uncomfortable with it. And in fact, 27% disagreed with Facebook characterization. For example, I think of myself as a politically centrist. Facebook says that I am extremely liberal. I don't know who is correct. Is it Facebook or me? Maybe Facebook know me better than I know myself. Many of you, I'm sure, are using Gmail. Have you read the terms of service? I bet you did not. If you read it, you will be actually very surprised how much what a license you're given to Google. Every time you send a paper on Gmail, you're giving Google a license to use that paper. And what happened here is that information no longer has any value. So whatever we think of the free market, it has pluses and minuses, but markets are a very good mechanism for discovering the value of things. I'm wearing a headset. What is the value of the headset? Well, the market decides what is the value, however much people are willing to pay for it. If somebody can make a headset cheaper than what I pay for it, and people will buy it, be happy with it, then the value of headset will go down. So what I call it, a couple of years ago, I wrote an article how the hippies destroyed the internet because there's no more market for information. We don't know the value of information. And in particular, newspapers are just going down the drain. They have lost the advertising business. Very small number of national newspapers in the United States are able to keep doing business. So it turns out that, for example, Trump was very good for the New York Times because people want to read news about Trump. But small city newspapers are just disappearing. And again, is it about ethics or is it about public policy? So this is one example. What I find the issue is not ethics, it is public policy. Let me give another example. So all of us use computing technology, and every time we use something, we agree to some license. You click yes, 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 yes. You don't read it, but you click yes. So here is a paragraph that I copied from a license by a very well-known corporation, large tech corporation. I won't put their name, but here is what he said: to the extent not prohibited by applicable law, in no event shall XXX, this corporation, be liable for personal injury or any incidental, special, indirect, or consequential damages whatsoever, blah, 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 blah. So they're basically saying we're not responsible for anything unless prohibited by law, but there are really no laws about this. So the answer is that companies that sell you computing product, hardware or software, are almost never liable for their product. And this must be distinguished from other notion of liability, which is strict liability. So suppose I drive my car and the tire blows up and I had an accident. And it turned out the tire blew up not because it was old, because there was some manufacturing defect. The manufacturer is strictly liable. They don't have to be negligent. If it's their product, they are strictly liable. And this doctrine of strict liability has evolved across the 20th century. There used to be the legal dogma used to be caveat emptor, buyer beware. If you buy a tire, check it out. It's your responsibility to check the tire is safe. But as we have developed more and more technology, courts and legislatures have realized there's no way for me to buy a tire and check how safe it is. How can I do that? I don't have the mechanism to do it. So liability has shifted from the buyer to the seller. The seller is always responsible. And this is not a new dogma. We can go back 4,000 years ago to the laws of Hammurabi in Mesopotamia, where he wrote, if a builder has built a house for a man and has not made his work sound, and the house which he has built has fallen down, and so caused the death of the householder, that builder shall be put to death. This is strict liability. You build a house, make it safe. You didn't make it safe, it's on you. But in the computer industry, no, they're not responsible for anything. And almost 25 years ago, Helen Eastman, and a philosopher, pointed out that what we have is eroding accountability in computerized society. And her paper argues that assumption about computing and fields of situation in which computers are produced create barrier to accountability. And she made various recommendations on how to address it, including strict producer liability. Companies should be liable. And again, I want to ask the question, is it an issue of ethics or is it the issue of lack of public policy? Remember, the license I showed you says to the extent not prohibited by applicable laws. It's up to us to pass law that says, yes, vendor of computing technology must be liable for their technology. It's up to us. It's not about ethics. So why is there no IT public policy? Well, the answer is that the IT industry is a huge industry. If you take the big five in the United States, just the big five in the United States, okay? So who are the big five? You have Alphabet and Apple and Amazon and Microsoft and Facebook. Their market capitalization is close to $7 trillion. This is a hugely powerful industry. And they have been lobbying very successfully against any regulation. And they always say, oh, if you regulate us, it will stifle innovation. 2 years ago, Elon Musk tweeted, there were some tweets, and he was accused of trying to manipulate the Tesla stock price. And Wired magazine jumped and said, the case again, Elon Musk will chill innovation. So because of innovation, Elon Musk should be exempt from following the law. So again, this is the attitude in the tech industry: regulation stifle innovation, don't regulate us. And in fact, it goes deeper to a techno-utopian culture. Somehow, as technology will save society. And in 1996, John Perry Barlow was one of the founders of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and they wrote a Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace. And this is how it opens. Government of the industrial world, you weary giants of flesh and steel, I come from cyberspace, the new home of the mind. On behalf of the future, I ask you of the past to leave us alone. Cyberspace belongs to the future, belongs to the mind. Leave us away, leave behind. We don't want to be encumbered by the laws of the past. Pretending somehow that what happened in cyberspace stays in cyberspace. We now know that cyberspace is in the real world. For example, there is a real possibility of state actors launching an attack on the US power grid. And it already turns out that Russia has probed the US power grid to plan such an attack. We don't know why, but we suspect they may have planned such an attack. Or attacking using technology to attack the US electoral system, election system. And I'll come back in a few minutes to that point. And beyond this techno-utopian culture, the disruption culture. So in 1995, Clayton Christensen wrote a very influential article called Disruptive Innovation. And he tried to describe how in technology, every new technology disrupts the previous technology. And his running example was disk drive technology. This is how big disk drive used to be. And he showed whenever there was a new innovation in disk drive technology, it was almost never the same company. It was always a new company that disrupted the previous company. While that article was descriptive, people now turn it into a prescriptive mantra. Disruption has become the mantra of Silicon Valley. Disrupt every business plan start with, we want to disrupt this, we want to disrupt that. And there is a short distance from disruption to breaking things. So Facebook motto until 2014 was move fast and break things. Unless you're breaking stuff, you're not moving fast enough. But what are you breaking? If you're breaking the payroll system, it's your problem. But we now know that Facebook frictionless sharing enabled massive dissemination of fake news. And it had a decisive impact on the 2016 US election, presidential election. This case was made in clear by Kathleen Jamieson in a book in 2018. And then since then it was confirmed by the Mueller report, recently by a report from the Republican Senate, describe how the Russian tried to affect the US election in 2016. And let's take the third example I want to take is what I would call criminality as a business model. So there is something called the sharing economy. I'm putting in air quotes, like Uber and Airbnb. But this business model is really, at the foundation, it's illegal. Why? If I want to drive people for money in most American cities, I can do it without getting a license to do it. We need what we call a taxi medallion. Okay, I cannot just start driving people for money. So that means that in principle, Uber drivers are breaking the law because they are not licensed. Similarly, if I want to decide to open a bed and breakfast in my house, and people will come, spend one day, maybe a week, and for money, I cannot do that. I'm not allowed to do that. I live in a residential area. It's against the law for me to do that. Airbnb doesn't check. Airbnb and Uber, they do not check if the driver have a taxi license. They do not check if the people who rent houses have a license to do it. So they're all based on the idea that they give us as good services that will be politically very difficult to stop it. They become very popular apps. Now imagine instead of using, imagine we start I started an app called Cannabis for Fun. And what I do, I will connect drug seller to drug buyers. And I will be just providing a platform. I will not sell drugs. I will just enable drug seller connection to drug buyers. Everybody will say this is a criminal business because you're facilitating crime. But somehow Uber and Airbnb got away with it. So again, is it about ethics or is it about the lack of public policy? And at the heart of it, there is a concept called corporate responsibility. So in 1960, if you went to a CEO and you ask, whom are you responsible to? They would say, well, I'm responsible to many stakeholders. I have shareholders, I have customers, I have an employee, I have a community. I try to balance the interests of all of them. But in the 1980s, the dogma became shareholder primacy. It's only about the shareholders. And it goes back to Milton Friedman, wrote a paper in 1970, where he argued the source responsibility of a business is to increase its profits. Even the business community is now trying to back off from it. And the Business Roundtable passed a resolution last year, said let's go back to stakeholders. Let's be more responsible. So the real question is, technology is driving the future, but who is doing the steering? And now it seems that it's really tech corporation rather than society at large. They deploy new technology and there are no regulation. Technology has moved very fast. Public policy has moved very, very slowly. Now, of course, regulation stifles innovation. But innovation is not a goal. Innovation just means to societal progress. What we want to do is societal progress. We want things to get better. And innovation for innovation's sake is not in the interest of society. And an article in the New York Times just last month said, let's stop blaming Milton Friedman about shareholder value. And he says, the point is not what corporations do. The point is, what should the state do? And what he wrote, Benjamin Applebaum wrote, government remains the most powerful means to express our collective will. So government expressed the collective will of society here. So the question is, how should the state behave, and what is the power of the state, as opposed to how should corporation behave? Corporation, we should decide how we want corporations to behave. So is it about ethics or public policy? So is ethics important? Of course, ethics is important. In fact, I co-teach a course at Rice on computing, ethics, and society. And the role of ethics has been discussed for a long time. Chief Justice Earl Warren in the 1960s wrote, in civilized life, the law floats in a sea of ethics. This is a beautiful metaphor. The law floats in a sea of ethics. Ethics informs public policy. Ethics is about individual action. Public policy is about societal action. We have struggled, what is the fine line between them? So in the 1930s, some people thought that drinking alcohol is a bad idea. So there was a constitutional amendment. It was called prohibition. And that ended up to be a terrible public policy. So there was another amendment, unrolling prohibition. So we keep struggling for the fine line between public policy and ethics. Ethics is about individual responsibility. Public policy is about societal responsibility. The law is institutionalized. We have We have a whole system of the law. Ethics is not institutionalized, generally speaking. So what will happen with regulation? You can see now that there's more and more recognition that we need to regulate technology. Washington Post editorial. Tim Cook in January of 2019 says we need more regulation. Mark Zuckerberg in March 2019, we need more regulation. Even in January of 2020, Alphabet CEO says we need a ban on facial recognition technology. So there's more and more recognition that we need more regulation of computing technology. Now, how to regulate? Oh, that's how to regulate. Regulation is just, this is, when I say regulation, it's the beginning of the discussion. It's not the end of the discussion. Regulation is hard. For example, good regulation depends on good governance. In countries that are corrupt, more regulation just means more bribe, because the regulator will be bribed. So you have to ask yourself, are we ready for a smart regulation? Countries where you have corrupt countries, regulation does not work very well. There is a cultural gap. US likes to regulate technology. Europe usually look at the societal impact. What about international technology that cross international line? We need maybe international treaty about technology. And underlying all of this is the question that's very much on the table: is big tech too big? Remember, we saw that these big 5 companies have a market capitalization close to $7 trillion. Is big tech too big? Tim Wu wrote in New York Times in 2018, be afraid of economic bigness, be very afraid. And this is now very much being discussed. There was just a hearing in Congress yesterday about whether to consider big tech companies monopolies. And some difficult decision. But I think there's some easy decision. Facebook should be forced to spin off Instagram and WhatsApp. The rest of Facebook is hard to split, but Instagram and WhatsApp, spin it off. Google should spin off YouTube. The pandemic, unfortunately, is increasing the power of big tech. What happened is that many of the small startups are not doing well. They have to lay off workers. They will not survive the economic consequence of the pandemic. But the big tech companies are doing very well. If you think about it, we are using internet. So all these big tech companies are doing very well, and they'll continue, they'll become even bigger and bigger. So tech is getting more and more powerful in view of the pandemic. So what should we do about technology? There are lots of questions. Some questions are very difficult. Take, for example, the issue of speech on social media. On one hand, we have free speech. On the other hand, we don't want Facebook to have hate speech, for example, and misinformation and disinformation. But we don't want Mark Zuckerberg to have too much power to decide what can we say on social media. So here are some modest suggestions of how to handle. What policy suggestion do we need? For example, we mentioned licenses before, that nobody can read their licenses. I don't require every license to include a single, what we call a simple language paragraph, something that explains the license. I said the Google license, the Gmail license is impossible, very difficult to read. Why not a simple paragraph to explain the Gmail license? We talk about automated decision system. And I mentioned to you the Chief Justice of the United States saying, oh my God, what's happening? Well, the Chief Justice is the chief regulator of the federal court system. And they should regulate automated decision making. For example, whenever you deploy such ADS, automated decision making, you should check for audit for bias. And there is an important column was written 2 years ago about regulating ADS, automated decision making. So we could regulate ADS by requiring making auditing requirement. When Yahoo was bought by AT&T, and they disclosed when they closed the deal that information leaked about 1.5 billion users. But they told us this a year after the breach happened. They should tell us about these breaches much sooner. No reason to. They should not be able to sit on it for more than a year. I would like to have an option to use Google services and pay for it, so there will be no advertising and no surveillance. I don't have this option right now. So these are all initial policy suggestions. I want to kind of close it. I said the goal should be the computing for a social good. And we find in some of the founding fathers of computing, Leibniz, who talk about the reasoning calculus already around in the 18th century. And what was the goal? He wrote, mankind will then possess a new instrument that will enhance the capability of the mind to a far greater extent than optical instruments strengthen the eyes. So he said the goal is to help people. The goal of computing to help people. Ada Lovelace, considered the first programmer, wrote a letter to Charles Babbage in 1843, and Babbage wanted to make money. And she said, okay, I'm okay with you making money, but I wish to add my mind towards expounding and interpreting the Almighty and his laws and his work for the most effective use of mankind. So the goal of computing ultimately should be for the social good. And we need to think about technology we are deploying. How much are we deploying technology for the social good? And how much is just to make money? And this tension between technology and societal implication is not only about computing technology. So in Greek mythology, Prometheus stole the fire from the gods, and then the god punished him, and an eagle eats Prometheus' liver every day. So this is Prometheus' individual punishment. But the god wanted to punish humanity. So they sent Pandora with a box of gifts to Prometheus' brothers. And when Prometheus' brother opened the box, all kinds of troubles came out of the box. Pestilence, famine, war. And now we use also the phrase Pandora's box as a box that supposedly contains gifts, but it actually has adverse consequences. So fire is the most fundamental technology of humanity. It goes back 1 million years. But we still are struggling to control fire. Look what's happening. We have now fire on the West Coast, huge fires. And so fires is the most fundamental technology of humanity, but people still die by fire. And especially now, we have more and more fires on the West Coast. So we started at RISE, a new initiative. We call it Technology, Culture, and Society. We want to study how technology impacts society and culture, and how society should respond to the impact of technology. And we conduct research and scholarship. We do education, and also we do outreach. We have public events. Society needs to understand the relationship between technology, culture, and society. And I'll finish with a slogan. The slogan is attributed to BMW. BMW, the motto of BMW was the ultimate driving machine. So they make cars that are meant for drivers. Now we have more and more automated cars. So BMW updated their technology, their slogan. Now they say, don't be driven by technology, drive it. Of course, they're talking about BMW cars, but I think this is a good slogan for society. Don't be driven by technology, drive it. Thank you very much. I'll close with that. Okay, now we can try to,
Thank you, sir.
Let me stop sharing. Okay. Let me stop sharing. I'm stopping sharing now. Okay. I'm speaking. Okay. Answer. Application sharing. Okay. Okay, good. Now I can see everybody. And now I'm happy to open it for discussion. Let's see if I can hear you, or we can use the chat.
So now I request participants to please put your queries. If you have any question or query, please ask.
A very good morning to you, sir. According
to
the US time, it is morning and evening in the India.
Yes.
Sir,
I'm just
It's very surprising to know about various loopholes in the business models of the various big tech giants and how they are violating the user's data privacy. Sir, just want to know what, according to you, can be the proposed solution to avoid this data privacy and data breaching by these companies. As you have suggested, there are some policies, but these policies will take time to implement. So, according to you, what can be the perfect solution so that we can stop this data breaching in 2-3 years? Please explain, sir. Yeah.
This I would say is that this is a very difficult this are very difficult problem. I don't think there is a solution. There are all kind of things that people are proposing. I'll give you an example. All the data that Facebook is gathering about you, it's really your data. Because it's your data, so some people are saying we should force them to pay you for the data. Okay? Other people are saying they should make the data portable. So, for example, right now, if I want to start a new company, that will be called, it will be called Face Notebook. I want to start a new social media. Facebook has gathered so much data, it will be very difficult for Face Notebook to compete with Facebook because they know so much about their users already. What if I could easily transfer all my data? I can give license to Face Notebook to copy all my data from Facebook. So this is what we call data portability. And so at the minimum, this will not address privacy. But somebody has their mic unmuted. But at least it will establish some competition. What part of the problem now, there's really no competition in the tech industry. Effectively, they're all monopolies. If you want to do a search, yes, you can use other search engines, but there is what they call the cycle. Because they have so much data, they have better services. Because they have better services, they can afford to hire more people and build better product. We need to create more competition. And in fact, this is right now, the focus is at the minimum, try to create more competition in the tech industry. As long as no competition, we are trapped. There is nothing we can do without more competition. And people are coming up with all kinds of ideas how to create more competition.
According to me, there is another solution that we should do more and more startups, and those startups should be independent from their parent companies. For example, Instagram and WhatsApp, they sold their complete shares to the Facebook before 10 years. So this should be avoided so that this monopoly cannot be created by the big tech giants, because today we know only the 5 companies like FANG who are which is governing the complete technology sector.
I'm in complete agreement. I think forcing a Facebook to spin off Instagram and WhatsApp, in my opinion, that's very easy. It will create more competition. Similarly, forcing Google to spin off YouTube. I mean, we should have never let them both these companies in the first place.
It's great, sir.
So I see a question in the chat. How, as an academic, we should teach young one for developing ethical behavior in computing? So we have a course at RISE called Computing Ethics and Society. And the goal is to teach students how to think ethically. But the bigger role is to help them develop what I call social responsibility. So these students will go out to the world, and we want them to, some of them will go to work for companies. And after taking the course, many students told me they don't want to go to Facebook or Google now. Now they understand that these are not ethical companies. They do not want to go and work there. And they say, well, because we're in computing and this is such a hot topic right now, we think we'll get many job offers. So we can avoid going to the unethical companies. And but these students will go to companies. They will also start products. We want them to think from day one about the societal impact of the product. We want them to think what are these products going to do to society. And this is something that I would say computer scientists typically did not think much about. They said, oh, it's up to sociologists to think about societal impact. And the answer is no, you're going to do this. So when students ask me, after taking the course, ask me, okay, what should I do? I said, you vote with your feet and you vote with your fingers. You vote with your feet by deciding which company to go to. Because once you're inside a company, you can't say, I don't want to work on this product, it's unethical. It's very difficult to do. But you decide which company to work for. Go and work for ethical companies. And also, when it comes to policy, much of policy is determined by, at the end of the day, policy is determined in the political process. So you have to think about the political implication of technology, and you have to exercise. You're not only a computing professional, you're also a citizen, and you should vote in favor of, ultimately, of ethical policies. Any other question?
Is there any other question? I request all the participants, please ask your queries. What should we now focus on ICT? Sir, there is a question from audio participants. The question is, what should we now focus in ICT ethics?
So I just wrote a paper with the person who co-taught this course on ethics with me. And we discussed, again, what should be the main focus of ICT ethics. And we decided that, for example, you guys may have heard about the trolley problem. There is a trolley, and the trolley can go one way, it kill one person, or you can steer it in 5 people, you steer it other direction, you kill 5 person. Lots of discussion like that. And we said these are not very useful discussion. We decided that the real issue is social justice. And social justice, it means mostly you have to think in our society there are people who have more power and more economic power and less economic power. And, in the United States, we have the issue of race. In India, you have the issue of caste. And so there are always level of society that have less power. These are the weaker. And the question is what is technology doing? We shouldn't have to worry too much about what technology is doing to the rich. The rich are benefiting from technology. We should mostly worry about how technology is affecting the weaker socioeconomic groups of society. And for example, if automation, what does automation do to the job market? So it turns out that the issue automation is good for some part of the economy. For example, at the high end of the job market, there are more very well-paid jobs. If you are in the computer industry, there are lots of very well-paying jobs. So if you are developing robots, these are great jobs. But who is going to be affected by these robots? These are people who are working in a factory. They will lose their jobs. And they have lost their jobs. And these were good jobs. These were middle-class jobs, and many of these people have lost their job. We have seen in the United States, about 25% of the people used to work in manufacturing if you go back like 40 years. And over the past 40 years, it went from 25% to 8%. Many, many jobs have been lost. And so the people who are affected are the weaker segments of society. And we have a responsibility to the weaker segments of society. So that's really, social justice is at the core of ethics of computing.
Sir, there is another question from the participants. According to you, should there be like that companies ask for many permissions and put our privacy in danger? What is the need for this, and what should be the alternative for this?
So, even if they ask for permission, it turns out this is not very effective. In fact, there was an article I read some time ago. It was called "The Con in Consent." Yeah, you click through. Because right now, for example, if you want to, if you want to be, you can tell people you don't have to use Facebook. But right now, Facebook is where much of my friends are sharing opinions. So telling me don't use Facebook is to say don't participate in an important societal conversation. And there's only one Facebook, so I don't have an option. It's not as if I could go to another one. There's really only one Facebook. So this is not a good answer. I mean, what we discussed before, first of all, we need more competition. And if there was more competition, there will be more innovation. More company will come up with other business model. I said, for example, I'm willing to pay, I don't know, maybe I'm making up a number, 500 rupees per month, okay, to pay to use Facebook. Turns out how much money Google made for Facebook is very small. How much money Google made per one user, Facebook make for one user. So I'm willing to pay for it. Now again, there is an issue with that of inequality. I can afford to pay it. Poorer people cannot afford to pay it. But the main thing we need, first of all, right now is more competition. As long as it's only one Facebook or one Twitter and one Google, it is very, very hard to find, to have effective regulation. The biggest issue is create more competition, more business model, and that would force the companies to innovate and propose, if privacy is important, somebody will come up with a business model that is more privacy oriented. But it's very hard to do without more competition.
Is there any?
Yes, sir. I have another question. Sir, is U.S. government taking any measures to maintain the ethical crisis or maintain the ethics of computer and computing? Any measures taken by the government?
So look, I mean, for example, another measure. I mentioned some measures. One measure would be to change liability laws. I think computer companies should be responsible and liable for their products. Why? I'm a computer professional. Why should our industry be exempt from, if I buy a toaster and a toaster starts on fire, then I'm responsible. Then the toaster company is responsible. Okay? So people who write software should be responsible for the software just as people who make any other thing. There should be no exemption. Okay, there should be more liable. If you change liability laws, companies start worrying about damages, and they start behaving more responsibly. So we have let this company go for too long without regulation. There's no magical answer. Regulation part of what doing regulation is experimentation. For example, Europe decided they want more privacy. So they passed a law called GDPR, General Data Privacy Regulation. GDPR has some good stuff, but also some bad stuff. So what they should do about it? They should go back to the drawing board and revise it. Okay, just like software, you have alpha release and beta release, and then you have patches. You can think of regulation as some kind of code. If you write code, you never get it right immediately. You develop it, you have users, you see how well does it work, you go back, you change it. The same thing we need to do with regulation. Some will work, some will not work. We need to change them. This is the first sentence of the U.S. Constitution says, "We the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, not a perfect union, a more perfect union." No country is perfect. Is the United States perfect? Not perfect. India perfect? Not perfect. What can we do in the world? Try to make the world a little better place. So there's no magic solution to technology. And we shouldn't look for one. People are looking for, it's like a mathematical problem. And they want to know if I plug in x equal to, the question will be satisfied. No, it's not going to be like that. We need to look at the situation and try to make incremental improvement and learn by experience. Looks like we have to close the session.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, sir. Many people are losing their job due to AI technology. Is it true?
This is a whole other topic. I could give a whole other talk on AI and automation and what it does to jobs. And the answer is yes. Technology. So the answer is technology create jobs and destroy jobs. Unfortunately, it's into creating jobs for people with high-end skills. Okay, people like me, I'm a computer professional. I don't expect not to have a job in the foreseeable future. We need more people who can write software, for example. But people with middle skill jobs, people with low level skill jobs, people who clean stable in a restaurant, we are very far from being able to automate their jobs. But middle skill jobs, for example, manufacturing workers, millions of the jobs have been automated and have been lost. And these people have been very adversely impacted. And this is a very, very quick summary, but this is a whole talk can be given just on that. But automation has affected people in a very negative way, absolutely.
Sir, then how to overcome this if many people are losing their job due to AI?
There are lots of discussion what to do about it. We know that the solution that does not work is to try to stop technology. Humanity has developed technology for many years. What we need is better social policies. For example, there is a proposal that is called UBI, Universal Basic Income, which is to say that these companies are, or some people call it robot tax. Tax the company that make robots and offer every citizen basic living allowance. And they said there is enough money in the economy, especially in rich economies. I mean, India is a developed country, so it's a developing country still. So it's a more difficult. But the Western Europe, United States, the Western world, these are all developed economies. They said there's really enough money. You can offer every citizen a living allowance. And first of all, we have to take make sure that everybody can make a living, because right now people lose their jobs. They lose in the United States, they lose everything. They don't have a job. Very often they can't, people lose their home because they cannot afford to make their rent payment. They lose their medical insurance. We're in the middle of a pandemic and many people have lost their health insurance. So the idea is that what we need is not to stop technologies, but to try to develop better social policies.
Sir, I think one more person there.
Sir, I'm Dr. Anam Kharji. I want to ask one thing. What kind of scientific research dominate in the field of ethics and good practice in business 2020?
I would say, you read a lot about ethics in AI, and I have to say that somehow they want the AI, they want the programs to be ethical. And I'm much more interested in people being ethical than in the programs being ethical. For example, as a part of ethics is, where should we deploy a program? Should in the justice system, should we deploy AI at all? That to me is an ethical question that is not about AI ethics, but is a business ethic and human ethics. And this seems to be a much more important question. One could make the argument the decision about life and death, for example, should never be made by machines. They should always be made by people. Okay? And so the issue is, the problem right now is that we have corporations that are immensely powerful, and the only responsibility is to their profits, and the law is very weak. So our problem right now is not that the program is unethical. So a hot topic now is going to be the governance of corporations. And in fact, just yesterday, we had a big hearing in the US Congress about, are these big tech companies, should we consider them as monopolies? If they're monopolies, there are already laws on the book how to deal with monopolies. And that's now going to be a huge debate, how to handle monopolies. So this is, to me, but you can Google AI ethics and you find lots and lots of papers that deal with it. I think this misses the point. Right now, our problem is not unethical programs, but unethical people, and even more than that, unethical corporations. And it's not even that they are unethical. As I said, I don't expect companies to behave in an ethical way. I want to behave in a legal way. and therefore that means we need to change the laws to make sure they behave the way we want them to behave. If we want to behave ethically, in ethical way, it means they should decide how to behave. I don't want the company to decide how to behave. I want society to decide how companies behave.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a wonderful session. Now, I would like to request a very senior academician from our country, Dr. S.S. Jain, for vote of thanks.
Hello. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you, Dr. Jain. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Vardi. You have given a very informative talk regarding ethics in computer sciences and artificial intelligence, machine learning, and is one very, very wonderful and informative talk for the students and for me also. As I am a biological student, I don't know much about the computer science, but still I could learn so many things from your speech. And thank you very much from the ICFI side of the ICFI University, as well as from my side also. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Dhanyavad.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. You all have a good, I will have a good day, and hopefully you'll have a good night.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, sir.